Village girl pleads for work from a powerful man. His test changes her life forever. Welcome to ADIRE Stories, from ancient African myths to modern mysteries. So sit back, relax, let's journey together through the magic of storytelling. Don't forget to subscribe. The morning sun rose over the small village of Humans like a tired blessing, dim, hesitant, filtered through dust and smoke. Roosters crowed not out of joy but habit, their calls echoing through crumbling mud huts and parched fields. The earth was cracked, the air heavy with the scent of cassava and despair. In one of the smaller huts at the edge of the village, Amina Okafor, barely 18, stirred before dawn. Her body ached, her stomach rumbled, but her spirit refused to stay still. She reached for the worn scarf beside her mat and tied it around her head, hiding her tangled curls beneath its faded pattern. "Water first," she whispered to herself, grabbing 2 yellow jerry cans. Her voice was low, hoarse from mornings spent calling out to customers at the roadside. Then cassava. Then Mama's medicine. But there was no medicine. Not anymore. She stepped outside into the cool air. The village well was a long walk away, half a mile past the withered palm grove. Other girls were already there, laughing weakly, balancing their containers with weary grace. Amina joined the line, eyes distant, mind already on her mother back home. The cough had worsened. Yesterday, Mom Ngozi could still sit by the door, humming old Igbo hymns as Amina peeled cassava. Today, her voice had been replaced by silence and the low, hollow sound of breathing that scraped like sandpaper. By the time Amina returned, sweat covered her back. She found her mother struggling to lift a cup of water. "Mama, please. Lie down." Mom Ngozi smiled faintly, her skin pale under the faint glow of the morning light. "You're just like your father," she said softly. "Always trying to fix what the world has already broken." "Don't say that," Amina replied, sitting beside her. "Papa used to say there's always a way. I'll find one." But she didn't know how. The small earnings from cassava sales barely bought food. The local clinic had turned them away last week. The nurse, kind but helpless, had said, "We need supplies from the city, child. Lagos or Onitsha. You know what that costs. Too much. Far too much." That night, the sickness took a cruel turn. Mom Ngozi coughed until she bled. The candlelight flickered over the walls, dancing over shadows of poverty and prayer. Amina ran to fetch help from the neighbor, but old Baba Chaik only shook his head. "No medicine here, my child. Not unless you go to the city." "The city," she repeated. "Lagos." He nodded, eyes tired. "They say there are hospitals there. Big ones. But people like us, we are invisible there." Invisible. The word struck her chest like a stone. When dawn returned, so did her resolve. Amina walked to the market, her cassava balanced on a wooden tray. She shouted prices louder than ever, forcing a smile for each buyer, ignoring the stares from men who mocked her torn wrapper. But deep inside, her thoughts were with her mother. Every coin she earned felt like a heartbeat stolen back from death. At sunset, she returned home with barely enough for porridge and kerosene. Her mother slept, her breath shallow. The world outside was alive with crickets and whispers, but inside their small hut, time stood still. Amina lit the kerosene lamp and knelt beside her mother's mat. The yellow flame trembled as if afraid to witness her decision. She reached under her pillow and pulled out an old photograph, her father standing proudly beside a young chief Tund Balewa. The man's face was firm, eyes sharp with the confidence of power. The photo was from long ago, when her father worked as a driver in the city. "That's him," she whispered. "The richest man in Nigeria. They say he owns half of Lagos." Her heart pounded. She looked at her mother's frail form and made a silent vow. "I'll find help, Mama. Even if I have to beg the richest man in Nigeria." The wind outside seemed to pause, as if the heavens themselves were listening. The next morning, she packed a small bag, a torn blouse, a wrapper, her mother's photograph, and the last of her earnings. She wrapped her mother's hand gently in hers. "Mama, please don't be afraid. I'll bring back the cure." Tears slid down her cheeks, but Mom Ngozi only smiled faintly through her pain. "My child," she whispered, "the world is full of snakes. Keep your heart pure. That's your only shield." Amina nodded. "I'll come back before the new moon." Outside, the sky was pink with promise. She walked down the dusty path toward the main road, her shadow stretching long and thin behind her. Villagers watched from their doorways, some with pity, others with admiration. Baba Chaik called out, "Amina, you're going to Lagos alone." She turned and smiled weakly. "I have no choice, Baba." He sighed. "Then may the ancestors walk beside you." At the roadside, a rusted old bus screeched to a halt. Its paint peeled, its seats torn, its windows rattling like bones. The driver leaned out, chewing on a toothpick. Lagos. Last stop Lagos. Amina hesitated for a moment. The city sounded like another planet. But then she felt the photograph in her pocket and climbed aboard. The bus jerked forward, belching smoke. Children waved as it rumbled past the village signboard, "Welcome to Umun's, home of honest farmers." Amina looked out through the cracked window. The fields rolled by like pages of her past, the cassava mounds, the palm trees, the river where she used to bathe. Each sight felt like a goodbye. As the sun climbed higher, the village disappeared behind a curtain of dust. The road ahead stretched endlessly, winding through hills and strange towns she had never seen. Her seatmate, an old woman with missing teeth, asked gently, "Where are you headed, daughter?" "To find a man," Amina replied, clutching her bag. "A very powerful man." The woman chuckled. "Ah, Lagos is full of powerful men. Be careful they don't eat you alive." Amina smiled faintly. "They can't eat what refuses to die." Night fell as the bus crossed into the outskirts of Lagos. Neon lights flickered through the darkness like restless spirits. Towering buildings replaced trees, horns replaced crickets. Amina pressed her forehead against the window, watching the vast city swallow her reflection. Fear mixed with wonder. Somewhere in this endless maze of light and noise lived the man whose name could change her mother's fate, Chief Tund Balwa. She whispered her mother's name once more, her voice trembling but firm. "Hold on for me, Mama. I'm coming back with hope." The bus stopped with a hiss of brakes. The door opened to the chaos of Lagos, hawkers shouting, engines roaring, lives colliding. Amina stepped down, clutching her mother's photo to her chest, eyes burning with determination. The camera closes on her face as she looks up at the skyline of Lagos, a sea of light and ambition. "I'll find him," she says softly, "even if I have to walk through fire." The air in Lagos was thick, not just with heat, but with ambition. Cars honked in a maddening rhythm, vendors shouted from every corner, and high-rises shimmered under the merciless sun. For a village girl like Amina Okafor, it felt like stepping into another world, one built of noise, money, and people who never looked down. She clutched her bag tightly, weaving through the crowd at Ojulegba bus park. Her worn slippers scraped against the pavement. Nobody noticed her. Nobody cared. To them, she was just another shadow swallowed by the city. But her heart burned with one name, Chief Tund Balwa. The man everyone spoke of with equal parts fear and awe. The billionaire whose face appeared on newspapers, whose companies fed and fired thousands. The one man powerful enough to change her mother's fate. She asked for directions at every turn. "Please, sir, Balwa Holdings, where is it?" Some laughed, others ignored her. A few gave vague gestures. "Go straight, then turn by the roundabout. You'll see the gates. You'll know them when you see them." By the time she reached the district, her feet were blistered. The skyscrapers grew taller, their glass reflecting the sun like mirrors of judgment. Security men in crisp uniforms patrolled the sidewalks. Sleek black cars rolled through gates that opened like the mouths of dragons. Then she saw it, Balwa Holdings. The building towered above all others, clothed in silver and pride. The front gates were iron, carved with the company's initials, BH, glinting like polished armor. Men in suits passed through as if the world itself belonged to them. Amina's throat tightened. She walked up slowly, heart pounding, and faced the two guards by the gate. "Good morning, sirs," she said, her accent thick but steady. "Please. I'm here to see Chief Beilwa." The guards exchanged amused glances. One tilted his sunglasses down. "You see the chief?" "Yes, sir," she said. "It's important. My mother is sick. I came from Yumun's village. Please, I just need a few minutes." The second guard laughed, shaking his head. "Madam, you think the chief is waiting for you? Look at your slippers. This is not the market." Amina's cheeks flushed, but she stood her ground. "I only ask for a chance." "Chance?" The first guard snorted. "Go back to your village. There's no chance here." They turned away, but Amina didn't move. She stood there as cars swept past. The heat rose from the pavement, burning through her thin sandals. Hours passed. The sun turned fierce, then began to fade. Still, she stood. By evening, the guards began to notice her persistence. "You're still here?" one asked, half amused, half concerned. "Yes, sir. I will wait until he sees me." "You'll die waiting," the man muttered. "Then I'll die with purpose," she replied softly. 3 days passed. Rain came down like punishment from the sky. Lagosians ran for shelter, but Amina stayed, shivering under the downpour. Her clothes clung to her body, her hair dripped with mud, but her eyes still burned with fire. The guards had grown silent now. They no longer mocked her. One even brought her a small packet of biscuits on the second night, muttering, "You're stubborn, girl." On the third morning, a black Rolls-Royce approached the gate. The guards straightened immediately. Inside sat Chief Tund Beilwa himself, a man in his late 50s, face chiseled by age and power. His eyes were hidden behind gold-rimmed glasses. His posture radiated command. As the car slowed, he noticed the figure by the gate, the same girl who had been standing there for days, soaked and trembling. "Who is that?" he asked coldly. "Sir," replied his head of security, "she's been here since Monday. Says she wants to see you. Something about her sick mother." Beilwa frowned. 3 days. "Yes, sir. We told her to leave, but she won't." For a moment, the chief said nothing. Then, curiosity flickered in his gaze, that dangerous kind of curiosity that comes when power meets defiance. "Bring her in," he said. "Let's see what desperation looks like up close." Inside the mansion-sized lobby of Beilwa Holdings, Amina's knees shook on the marble floor. Everything gleamed, the chandeliers, the polished tiles, the cold air conditioning that bit at her skin. She could smell wealth. It hung in the air like perfume. When the doors to the office opened, she looked up, and there he was. Chief Tund Beilwa, seated behind a mahogany desk large enough to sleep on, his suit dark and perfect, his expression unreadable. "Come forward," he said. Amina obeyed, her heart pounding. "So," he began, his voice deep and slow, "you are the girl who refuses to leave my gate." "Yes, sir," she whispered. He studied her, the torn blouse, the cracked hands, the sunburnt face. "And what could you possibly want from me?" "My mother is sick," she said, her voice trembling. "The doctors said she needs medicine from the city." "I'll do anything, sir. Any work. Just give me a job, please." He leaned back, unimpressed. "You think life works that way? You stand in the rain, and the world rewards you." "No, sir," she said. "But I have nothing else left to lose." A faint smirk crossed his face. "You have courage, or maybe just foolishness. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir. You're Chief Tund Beilwa." "Then you know I don't hand out favors. Everything has a price. Even kindness." Amina met his gaze. "Then let me earn it." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. a mix of intrigue and disbelief. "Earn it," he echoed. "Very well. Let's see what your desperation is worth." He stood and walked toward her slowly, each step echoing through the vast office. "You want a job? I'll give you one. Clean my old factory warehouse, every inch of it. Alone. 2 days. If you finish, I'll give you work here. If you fail," he smiled thinly, "you disappear." Amina swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." He turned to his secretary. "Give her access to the factory. Nothing more." As she was led away, the chief returned to his desk, his expression unreadable. One of his aides hesitated. "Sir, why bother with her?" He didn't look up. "Because people like her remind me what hunger looks like. It's entertaining." Back outside, the rain began again. Amina stood before the massive, rusted factory gates. The challenge was absurd, but it was all she had. She touched the photo in her pocket, whispering to herself, "For Mama." Then, she stepped into the darkness of the warehouse, her silhouette framed by the dim city light. Inside the chief's office, the security monitor flickers, showing Amina pushing open the factory doors. Chief Balwa watches from his chair, a faint smirk on his lips. "Let's see," he murmurs, "how far faith can go against reality." The factory smelled of dust and memory. Broken machines lay scattered like corpses of forgotten dreams. Cobwebs hung from iron beams, and puddles of rainwater shimmered beneath the faint light coming through the cracked roof. Amina Okafor stood at the doorway, a broom trembling in her blistered hands. Her eyes swept across the cavernous space, wider than any church she had ever seen. "This place," she whispered, voice trembling, "I could work for a year and never finish." Still, she stepped forward. She had made a promise. The echo of her footsteps filled the air. She tied her wrapper tighter and began sweeping. Dust rose in clouds, choking her lungs. Her palms burned, but she pressed on. Every stroke of the broom was a prayer. Every drop of sweat, a plea for her mother's life. By mid-afternoon, the sun baked the tin roof until it hissed. Amina's breath came in ragged gasps. She found a rusty bucket and fetched water from a leaking tap at the corner. The water was brown, but it was all she had. She wiped her face, then looked around the endless room again. The floor stretched in every direction, covered in grime thicker than clay. 2 days, she murmured, shaking her head. 2 days to clean a world. But her father's voice echoed in her memory. "You don't stop because it's hard, my daughter. You stop when it's done." So she kept going. By nightfall, her hands were raw and bleeding. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since morning. She sat against a wall, clutching her mother's photo. The face in the picture smiled up at her, calm and kind. "Mama," she whispered, "I won't fail you. I promise." Tears streaked through the dust on her cheeks. At Balwa Mansion, miles away, Chief Tund Balwa sat in his study, sipping wine. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the girl is still at the warehouse." The chief raised an eyebrow. "Still? It's been 12 hours. "Yes, sir." "She hasn't stopped." For a brief moment, something like surprise crossed his features. Then it vanished. People will do anything when their backs touch the wall. "She'll quit by morning." But he said it without conviction. Day 2. The dawn came gray and heavy with rain. Amina woke shivering on the concrete floor, her limbs aching. She had slept barely an hour. Still, she rose. She found a broken mop and a tattered rag. The water was colder now, the stains harder to remove. Her fingers trembled, but she sang softly, a lullaby her mother used to hum when they were poor and hungry. "When the road is long, walk with your heart. When the night is dark, pray with your hands." Her voice echoed, thin but unwavering. By noon, the workers in nearby departments had gathered by the doorway, whispering. "Is she still at it?" one man asked. "Yes," another replied. "Since yesterday. Alone." The chief's test. They laughed, shaking their heads. She won't last. None of us could. But when they peeked inside, the sight silenced them. The girl on her knees, scrubbing the floor until her reflection appeared in the metal tiles. Hours later, she felt her strength fading. Her arms shook violently. Her vision blurred. She tried to stand but fell, the mop clattering beside her. For a moment, she lay still, her breath shallow. The edges of the room began to darken. No, not yet, she thought. Not yet. She dragged herself toward the water bucket, dipped the rag again, and kept wiping. The walls seemed to move. The shadows whispered. And then, her voice broke the silence. "Papa, give me strength. I must save Mama." At that moment, another pair of eyes watched her, hidden behind the half-open door. Dapo Balewa, the chief's only son, had come to check on the strange girl his father had spoken about. He was curious, perhaps even skeptical. But what he saw stunned him. The girl was still working. Her knees were bleeding, her clothes soaked with sweat and grime, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Yet her eyes, even through exhaustion, still held a fierce light. He stepped closer, his expensive shoes echoing on the clean patch of floor she had just finished. "Hey," he said softly. Amina didn't hear him. She was lost in rhythm. Scrub, rinse, breathe. He crouched down beside her. "Why do you care so much?" Her head lifted weakly. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. The face before her was smooth, proud, framed by an expensive suit. She managed a faint smile. "Because my mother's life depends on it." Dapo frowned. "You could have left. No one would blame you." "I would blame myself," she whispered. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood. "You're either brave, or insane." "Maybe both," she murmured, her voice fading. Dapo turned and walked out. The image of her burned into his mind. That night, as the clock struck midnight, the warehouse was silent again. The floor gleamed faintly, not perfect, but alive, transformed by her hands. Amina lay on the ground, half conscious, surrounded by buckets and rags. Her breath came in shallow waves. In her dreams, she saw her mother standing in a field of cassava, smiling. "You did well, my child. You fought." She reached out, and woke up to the sound of footsteps. It was dawn. Chief Balewa himself entered, his shoes clicking on the newly cleaned floor. His eyes scanned the room, then stopped on the frail figure lying near the center. For a long moment, he said nothing. The factory that had been dead for years now shone with life again, not from money or machines, but from sweat and faith. He walked closer, stopping beside her. Amina stirred weakly, trying to rise. "Sir." He raised a hand. "Stay down." His voice was quieter now, less steel, more shadow. He looked around, then nodded slowly. "You did it." Her eyes widened. "Then I have a job." He hesitated, caught between disbelief and respect. "You have something. We'll discuss it tomorrow." He turned to leave, but paused. "Rest. You've earned that much." Outside, Dapo waited. "Well?" he asked. The chief glanced back at the factory. "She did it." Dapo exhaled. "And you still think people like her are weak?" The chief didn't answer. He stepped into the car, lost in thought. Back inside, Amina lifted her face to the dawn light breaking through the roof. Her body ached, but her heart sang. "Mama," she whispered, "I didn't fail." Camera fades to Dapo standing by his car, watching the sunrise over the factory. He looks at his hands, still stained with oil from helping her lift a bucket. He murmurs, "Why do I care so much?" Morning light spilled across Balewa Mansion, touching marble floors and glass walls that reflected power like a mirror. Inside, servants moved quietly, polished shoes clicking, silver trays gleaming, silence obeyed. Among them, Amina Okafor now walked, head bowed but eyes bright with determination. Her hands still bore the scars of the warehouse, blistered, red, proud. Chief Tund Bailwa had kept his word. After completing the impossible task, he had given her a position, not in his company, but in his mansion, as a cleaner. To the others, it was nothing. To her, it was everything. She began before sunrise, scrubbing marble steps, polishing chandeliers, tending to the garden. The city's noise felt distant here. Beyond the gates of power, the world ran by different rules. When she first saw the mansion's dining hall, she thought it was a dream. Gold plates, crystal glasses, flowers from Europe. But she didn't stare long. She had work to do. From his office upstairs, Depo Bailwa watched her. He couldn't understand why he was doing it, this strange fascination with a girl who had come from the dust. She moved with quiet grace, never complained, never asked for favors. Even the senior staff whispered about her discipline. When she cleaned the hall, she hummed softly, an old Igbo hymn that seemed to chase away the mansion's cold silence. Depo found himself pausing in the hallway just to listen. One afternoon, a small incident changed everything. A meeting had just ended. Depo walked down the corridor, tossing his wallet carelessly onto a side table as he took a call. When he returned hours later, it was gone. He frowned, irritated. Who cleaned this hallway today? The head servant hesitated. It was the new girl, sir. Amina. Of course, Depo muttered. Bring her here. Moments later, Amina appeared, her hands still damp from washing dishes. Yes, sir. My wallet, he said sharply. Where is it? Her eyes widened. Your wallet. Yes. It was right here. Now it's gone. I saw it, sir, she said quietly. I thought you might need it, so I took it to your room. You what? I didn't open it, sir, she said quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. I just didn't want it to get lost. He studied her, the way her fingers twisted nervously, the honesty in her voice. You expect me to believe that? She nodded, calm despite the accusation. Yes, sir. Because it's the truth. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Fine. Show me. She led him upstairs to his room. The wallet sat neatly on his bedside table, untouched. Depo stared at it, speechless for a moment. Then he turned to her. You could have taken it. Amina lowered her gaze. My mother didn't raise a thief. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. When she turned to leave, Depo's voice stopped her. Amina. Yes, sir. He hesitated. Thank you. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Small, humble, radiant. You're welcome, sir. That night, Depo couldn't sleep. He sat by his window, staring at the city lights. He thought of the board meetings, the wealth, the empty victories. And then, that girl's eyes, filled with something he couldn't name. He whispered to himself, what kind of man have I become? That honesty surprises me. Meanwhile, Amina lay on her thin mattress in the servants' quarters, her thoughts drifting between gratitude and worry. She had sent most of her first wages to the village. A small amount, but enough for food and medicine. Still, her mother's health haunted her dreams. She prayed softly, her hands clasped. Lord, give me strength to finish what I started. And if this house is my test, let me pass it with honor. Days turned into weeks. Chief Bailwa barely spoke to her, though she caught him watching her once or twice. He was a man haunted by his own legend, stone-faced, unbending. Yet when Amina passed by with her cleaning cloth, he felt a strange discomfort in his chest, something like memory. One evening, while hosting foreign investors, he noticed Amina serving tea with her usual quiet focus. The guests laughed too loudly, the air thick with pride and politics. Then one of them, a balding man with a gold ring, accidentally spilled tea all over the marble floor. Girl, he barked. Clean this mess. Amina hurried over with a cloth. But when she bent to wipe it, the man's voice snapped again. Faster, you stupid thing. The room went still. Chief Beelwa's eyes narrowed. Before he realized what he was doing, he said coldly, "That's enough. She's not a slave. You can clean your own mess." The guests fell silent. The man stammered an apology. Amina froze, eyes wide, not with fear this time, but gratitude. When the meeting ended, Beelwa found her still cleaning quietly in the corner. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Because, sir, I didn't want to embarrass you in front of your guests." He blinked, startled by her words. "Embarrass me? Yes, sir. You are a great man. I'm just a servant." For a moment, the chief looked at her, really looked, and something inside him shifted. He turned away quickly. "You may go." "Yes, sir." Later that night, father and son crossed paths in the hall. "You spoke up for her," Depo said quietly. "She works hard," Beelwa replied, trying to sound detached. "She's different," Depo added. "Different. She has something we've forgotten, father. Decency." The chief said nothing. He only walked to his study and poured himself a drink, the weight of his son's words echoing louder than the clink of glass. The next morning, Depo saw Amina in the garden, tending the flowers. He hesitated, then approached. "You like plants?" She nodded. "They remind me of home. You have to be gentle with them, but firm. That's how they grow." He smiled slightly. "You sound like my mother." Her face softened. "What was she like?" "Kind," he said quietly. "Too kind for this world." Amina looked down. "Then she must have been strong." He met her eyes, and for the first time, his usual coldness faded. "Yes, she was." As he walked away, Amina returned to her flowers, unaware that both men of the Beelwa household, father and son, were being changed by the same quiet flame. Night falls over Lagos. Depo stands before his mirror, the city lights flickering across his reflection. He whispers, almost to himself, "If she can stay pure in this world, maybe there's hope for me too." Evening draped its velvet shadow over Lagos. Inside Beelwa Mansion, chandeliers glowed like trapped stars, but behind that brilliance, silence reigned, the kind that belonged not to peace, but to memories no one dared disturb. Amina Okafor moved quietly through the corridors, dusting portraits that stared down at her from gilded frames. One painting always caught her attention, a woman in white, eyes gentle, smile faint, hand resting on a young boy's shoulder. She'd asked another maid once who the woman was. "Madame Beelwa," the maid whispered. "The chief's late wife. Died long ago." After that, the man you see now was born. Hard as granite, cold as steel. Amina had nodded but said nothing. Still, whenever she passed that portrait, she felt an ache, as though the house itself mourned. That night, while polishing the silver in the dining room, she overheard raised voices. "Father, it's not charity." Depo's voice, sharp but controlled. "And I said no," thundered Chief Tund Beelwa. Curiosity pricked Amina's heart. She stood by the doorway, listening. "She's sending half her pay to the village," Depo continued. "Her mother's dying. You could easily help her, father. A small sum. Nothing to you." The chief slammed his glass on the table. "Enough. You think I built this empire by handing out pity? She earned it." Depo's tone rose, cracking with emotion. "She cleaned your entire factory, and now you're home, without a complaint." The chief's reply came like a knife. "Compassion is weakness, son. This world eats the poor alive, and I learned that the hard way." Depo stepped closer. "And what has that made you? Powerful? Or alone?" A tense silence followed. Amina's hands trembled around the rag she held. Then, the chief's footsteps thundered away, leaving the echo of broken pride behind. Later that evening, Amina found Depo sitting in the garden. His shoulders slumped, eyes lost in the distance. "You shouldn't have spoken to him like that," she said softly. He looked up, startled. You heard. She smiled faintly. The walls have ears. Depo sighed. He wasn't always like this. My father used to smile, once. But when my mother died, something in him died too. Amina sat beside him on the stone bench. The night smelled of jasmine and rain. Maybe grief doesn't kill us, she said. Maybe it just buries the good parts. He studied her face, the simplicity, the strength beneath gentleness. You talk like a preacher. She laughed quietly. No, sir. I just talk like someone who's seen pain and decided not to stay there. He smiled, for real this time. You shouldn't call me, sir. Then what should I call you? Depo, he said. Just Depo. Inside, Chief Beelwa sat in his study, staring at an old photograph. In it, he was young, smiling, standing beside his wife. She held little Depo in her arms. The world back then seemed kinder, or maybe it was just him who had been different. He remembered the day he lost her, the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic, the moment the doctor shook his head. He had been poor then, powerless, watching the love of his life fade because he couldn't afford proper care. That day, he swore never to be powerless again. And in keeping that vow, he had killed the softness in his soul. The next morning, Amina was cleaning the corridor when she found the chief standing before the same portrait she'd admired so often. Good morning, sir, she said hesitantly. He didn't turn. Do you know who this woman was? Yes, sir. Your wife. He nodded slowly. Ngozi. She had your fire, you know. She would have liked you. Amina's heart softened. I'm sorry for your loss. He looked at her then, truly looked, and for a moment he saw not a servant, but a mirror of the woman he'd once loved, humble, strong, unbroken. You work hard, he said finally. Why? For my mother, she replied simply. She's sick. I came here to save her. He sighed. The world isn't kind to people like you. Then I'll be kind to it, she said. Someone has to start. Her words struck him like a blow he didn't expect. He turned away, muttering, You remind me too much of what I've forgotten. That evening, Amina received an envelope under her door, anonymous, but inside was money. Enough to cover her mother's medicine. She held it to her chest, tears spilling down her face. But when she tried to thank Depo the next morning, he looked confused. I didn't send anything. Her joy froze mid-breath. You didn't. He shook his head. No. But I have a feeling I know who did. Later, when Chief Beelwa entered the dining room, Depo was waiting. So you did help her after all, Depo said, arms crossed. The chief's eyes narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about. She found the envelope, father. You can deny it, but she knows. Why hide your kindness? Beelwa's expression hardened. Because kindness makes people expect more. And expectation breeds weakness. Or maybe it breeds faith, Depo countered. And faith is something you've forgotten. Enough, the chief snapped. You think you understand the world? You've lived your life behind my walls. You know nothing of hunger, of crawling through mud for survival. I built everything you see because I refused to beg. But she begged, Depo said softly. And you listened. That silence, deep, raw, said more than either of them wanted to admit. That night, the chief couldn't sleep. He walked through the mansion halls, past the portraits, past the ghosts of his past, until he reached the servants' quarters. Amina was awake, writing a letter by candlelight. He watched her from the doorway, unseen, as she whispered aloud while writing. Mama, I think God sent me here for a reason. The people in this house, they are rich in money, but poor in peace. Her words pierced him. He stepped forward quietly. You're right, you know. She gasped, rising to her feet. Sir. He raised a hand. Relax. Sit. He pulled a chair and sat across from her, his tone strangely gentle. Tell me about your mother. And so she did, about the village, the poverty, the laughter despite the hunger. About the sickness that came like a thief in the night. The chief listened, truly listened, for the first time in years. When she finished, his eyes were wet. Tomorrow, he said quietly, I'll show you something. A place that needs you more than this house does. If you pass that test, your life will never be the same. The camera closes on Amina's face, half in candlelight, half in shadow. Her eyes widen with both fear and hope. She whispers, another test? The chief turns away, his voice low, haunted. Yes. The one that will decide who you truly are, and who I still might be. The morning after their quiet conversation, Amina Okafor stood nervously outside the mansion, clutching her worn scarf. The city breeze carried the smell of rain and fuel, the song of awakening Lagos. Chief Tund Balewa stepped out moments later, immaculate as always, dressed in a dark suit that gleamed beneath the sun. Yet something in his posture had changed. His eyes, once cold and sharp, now seemed heavy, as though the walls of his empire weighed on him. Come, he said simply. Amina followed, her heart hammering. A black car waited by the gate. The driver opened the door, and soon they were gliding through the city streets, past skyscrapers, traffic jams, and billboards bearing the chief's name. She stared out the window, wondering where they were going. Sir, she asked softly, what kind of test is this one? He didn't answer immediately. You'll see soon enough, he said at last. But this one is not about cleaning floors or proving strength. It's about something rarer, leadership. Her brows furrowed. Leadership. Yes. The kind that money can't buy. After an hour, the car slowed. The air changed, from perfume and concrete to dust and decay. They had left the glittering part of Lagos behind. Ahead lay broken houses, dry wells, children playing barefoot in puddles. The car stopped before a large, rusted gate. The sign above it was faded, almost illegible, Balewa Estates, Community Project, abandoned. This place, the chief said, stepping out, was once meant to be a housing program for the poor. My wife's idea. She wanted to build schools, clinics, homes. But after she died, he paused, eyes distant. I closed it down. Amina's gaze swept the area, the cracked walls, the empty wells, the hopeless faces peeking from behind broken doors. Why show me this? She asked quietly. He turned to her. Because if you truly want to work for me, this is your job. Help me rebuild it. She blinked, stunned. Me? You, he said firmly. I'll give you a small budget and a few workers. If you can bring life back to this place, if you can lead them, then you'll earn your place in my company. She swallowed hard. And if I fail? He looked away, his voice low. Then I'll know I was right. That kindness is just another form of weakness. By noon, Amina walked through the ruins of the community. Her steps crunched over gravel and broken glass. Dozens of eyes followed her. Men, women, children, worn down by neglect. She gathered them by the well, her voice trembling at first. My name is Amina Okafor, she began. I've been asked to help rebuild this place. But I can't do it alone. I need your help. The crowd murmured skeptically. One man scoffed. You. A young girl with no power. She met his gaze steadily. Maybe I don't have power. But I have hope. And that's something this place has forgotten. An old woman stepped forward. What do you need from us, child? Amina smiled. Your hands. Your heart. Your belief. And with that, the work began. Days passed. The small team she assembled cleared the trash, repaired broken fences, cleaned the old wells. Amina moved among them, carrying buckets, hammering nails, teaching children songs as they worked. She rose before dawn and slept under the stars, refusing comfort. She cooked with the women, laughed with the children, listened to every story of loss and survival. Bit by bit, Life began to return. From afar, Chief Beelwer watched in silence. His black car parked at a distance each evening, unseen. He saw the light coming from the once dead buildings, heard the laughter of children where silence had once reigned. He couldn't believe it, all this, born not from wealth, but from one girl's will. Even Dapo, who visited secretly on the third week, was awestruck. "She's changing them," he said quietly, standing beside his father. "No," the chief murmured, his voice breaking. "She's changing me." By the 6th week, the transformation was undeniable. The wells were clean, a small food drive had begun, and a makeshift school operated beneath a large mango tree. Amina taught reading and writing to the children every afternoon. "Dream big," she told them, "even if the world tells you not to." One day, a little boy asked, "Auntie Amina, do rich people care about us?" She paused, looking toward the horizon. "Some forget," she said softly. "But I think even the hardest hearts can remember." Then came the day of inspection. A black convoy of cars rolled in, stirring the dust. Workers froze, whispers spreading. "The chief is here." Chief Beelwer stepped out slowly, his polished shoes crunching on gravel. He looked around, the freshly painted walls, the laughter, the music playing from a radio. It was no longer a ghost town. Amina ran forward, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "Welcome, sir." He stared at her for a long time, unable to speak. Finally, he said, "You did it." She smiled. "We did it." He turned to the crowd. "My friends," he said, voice booming with authority, "this girl has done what even I could not. She brought life to a place I left to die." Murmurs of gratitude filled the air. Some villagers clapped. Children cheered. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Chief Beelwer did something unthinkable. He sank to one knee before Amina. Gasps echoed. "Sir," she cried, "please, don't do that." But he looked up at her, eyes glistening. "You didn't just pass my test, Amina. You reminded me of who I used to be." Tears streamed down her face. He rose and faced the crowd again. "From this day forward," he announced, "this community will live again. Amina Okafor will lead my new foundation, dedicated to helping rural women across Nigeria. And her mother's treatment will be fully paid for." The crowd erupted in applause. Children danced. Women wept. Amina stood frozen, overwhelmed. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "No, child. Thank you. You gave me back my heart." Weeks later, in her village of Umans, drums thundered as Amina returned home. Villagers poured into the road to greet her, singing, ululating, celebrating the girl who had left with nothing and returned with everything. She ran into her mother's arms. Mom Ngozi, frail but smiling, whispered, "My daughter, you did what even men twice your age wouldn't dare." Amina hugged her tightly, tears streaming. "I promised I'd come back, Mama. And I kept my word." That night, under a sky blazing with stars, she stood outside their little hut, the wind caressing her face. She looked up at the heavens and whispered, "Mama, your daughter made it." Camera pans to Chief Beelwer standing before a new signboard, the Amina Foundation, for Women of Strength. Dapo stands beside him, smiling. The narrator's voice fades in, calm and deep. And that's how a village girl changed the heart of the most powerful man in Africa. The end. Loved the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the ADIRE Stories family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.